All right, everybody, what is up? So today we are talking about exercises the exercise actually that will hurt shoulders, how to diagnose and how I treat. Okay. So I actually published a paper on this that has gone viral, still goes viral to this day, um, on a condition that I see in here, and some of them, a lot of them have like the up failed everything story, what I call that, and it's shocking to me. And what they have is okay. So this is my left shoulder right here, right? And what they have is pain in the posterior aspect of the shoulder. So they'll point right here. Okay. And sometimes it aches down their arm, but it's typically a sharp pain. I've seen people not be able to raise their arms up, right? They go everywhere. They went to PT hurt them, right? Now, inevitably, the conversation comes up is what did the PT have you do? Excuse me. What did the PT have you do? And one of the main things that they say is bilateral external rotation. Bilateral external rotation. Now, here's the problem with that is when you have a posterior shoulder impingement syndrome, not superior, posterior, okay? So back here, okay? And you put the person into a 90-90 test like this, okay? And I published this, okay? You can read my paper, weltonmethods.com. And I push it, it hurts, make it provoke the pain, and then glide the humeral head posterior and inferior. Okay, posterior, inferior. Okay. And when you glide the humeral head posterior, posterior and inferior, then, and the person says the pain goes away, then you cleared the impingement. Okay. So a 90-90 test to me is not good enough for posterior impingement syndrome, or otherwise known as internal impingement syndrome. And for a superior impingement syndrome, Kennedy-Hawkins test, and I'm not a fan of that test, but Kennedy-Hawkins test and Neer's test, I'm a fan of. But that only indicates that the problem is superior impingement. It doesn't confirm it. What does confirm it to me is when you actually relocate it back and down in the socket while the person's in pain, and then their pain goes away. Okay? And when their pain goes away, then you just confirmed that that is what the problem was. And then you create that. Okay? So I see people all the time that were injured at physical therapy offices. And if they had just left out this exercise, for posterior impingement pain, okay? Posterior impingement syndrome, 90-90 test, you provoke it. If you give them this exercise, you are jamming it, okay? And that makes it worse. It hurts. And then they quit, and then it's, it's a crapshoot for these poor people, right? But when the person, so the therapist was on the right track, okay? Because they were stretching the pecs, strengthening the parascapular muscles. They just threw this one in, okay? And when you do bilateral external rotation for posterior impingement syndrome or external rotation on one side, you are going to impinge it even more. It's like a superior impingement, right? Neer's test provokes it because you impinge it, you pinch it, right? And what you're doing is having the patient literally, oh yeah, keep going, man. Yeah, keep going. And you're pinching it biomechanically, right? So of course the patient's going to be upset about it, Of course the patient's going to be upset and flare it up, and then they quit, okay? And now they're back out into the medical system, okay? When you were on the right track, So posterior impingement syndrome, I mean, I've had people that have seen countless providers, have no idea, like, it's just, it actually fascinates me, that and rib head misalignments actually in here. I have what I call the Up Failed Everything Clinic. like medical mysteries, and I see ribhead misalignments. And I'm like, really? Like I learned that at Northeastern University in 2005, four, you know? I'm like, that's not something that Ryan Welton created, like, you know? And I'm like, that's crazy to me. But mechanical issues, actually, I see in here a lot. Okay, most of it. Mechanical issues and stress injuries, I call it. And they're falling through the cracks because you have to actually put your hands on the patient to diagnose a mechanical issue. They actually have to have the pain, and then you have to realign the mechanics of it, and then you create that like a sculptor. You create what made them feel better. Okay, stretch this muscle, strengthen that muscle. I created protocols. If you comment expert below, I have my clinical mentorship. Where you get 59% off all of my courses. And then also we work together and I become your mentor in the clinic. Okay. One thing I hear all the time is, new grads, especially, right? They want a mentor, and they get to a clinic and they're like, man, there's nobody here that, I look up to or whatever. People are looking for people with like advanced degrees, like, I got this certification, that certification. That is not what you should be looking for. You should be looking for the people with the best results because ultimately that's what the patient's there for, right? So, anyways, if you can't find a mentor or are looking for one, whatever, I'm your guy. Just comment. You have to be willing to change though. Okay. Comment expert below, and I will teach you how I get exceptional results in a medical mystery type of clinic. Okay. Anyways, shoulder impingements are something that I feel like most people get good results with superior shoulder impingements. Okay. Most people get good results with that. But it was the posterior shoulder impingement that started to show up years ago in here. And the person's like, I've been to so many people, I've had injections, I've had this, I've had that, but it doesn't really show up on x-rays and MRIs, and therefore it's kind of fallen under the radar, like SI joint, sacral torsion shear, which is what I do all day long. Those issues, I believe, in my clinical observations, the most common cause of back pain. I published papers on that too, that made statistically medical history getting up to 26 times the typical readership of an orthopedic paper annually. 3 to 5 years post publication, it still goes on. AI calls it evergreen, that it's a foundational paper in the field of orthopedics that you have to read to understand these issues. Anyways, shoulders, I don't find shoulders overly difficult. I like, once you test their strength and you realize, always test their strength. And you realize that the person, they have full strength, right? And then you start asking where the pain is. If it's up here, it's usually, I find, bicipital tendonitis or slap tear. And I'll talk about that in another video. I have talked about that on how I diagnose the differentiation of slap tear. It's actually unconventional, but I find it to be the most accurate for me. If they're talking about pain up here, horizontal adduction, then it's usually AC joint issues, right? If they're talking about pain here, coming down here, it could be the pinching of the supraspinatus, but also could be rotator cuff, just do an empty can test, right? If they have pain everywhere and limited range of motion, like severe pain, can't sleep, oftentimes it's a frozen shoulder. And then in the back in here, put them in a 90-90 test. If that pinches and then you relocate it, push it posterior inferior in the socket, posterior inferior in the socket while they're in the provocative position, then and the pain goes away with an impingement syndrome, then not only did you just diagnose what the problem was, you actually know how to treat it too. Okay. And I go much more in depth on how to treat it. I don't worry about these conditions. I don't feel stressed when one of these conditions come in. I don't care what they tried. I I don't feel stressed about it. I mean, it's just like, all right, well, I'm putting you on my protocol and we'll work together. I'll troubleshoot it if I need to. And I'm just kind of waiting, for the joint to realign and the pain to go away. The person obviously the person has to follow through. Um, but I don't have that problem because I have a cash-based business, so people are paying me a lot of money. So they're willing to follow through. Um, they are not like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't have time to do my exercise." It's like they want results, right? So, anyways, I've been talking a lot. There's limited spots with this, but I've been talking a lot about my 7-figure, 20-hour a week cash-based business model. People say, "How is that possible? How are you doing that?" Here's how I'm doing that. Here's how that is possible. Is over the years in this medical mystery type clinic that I call it, is that I started to see the same thing over and over again. And I started to like SI joints, sacral torsion shear, rib head misalignment, stress injuries, like TMJ, neck pain, headaches, that kind of thing, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, these people have spent $20 to $120,000 on average, they tell me, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, had it for years, decades, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, over the years, I started listening to the words that they were using and how they described their condition. And I'm like, well, I'm, I want to help these people. So I started to put out ads on Facebook, Instagram. That's all I do. Facebook, Instagram. I started putting out ads, and I started. These patients were diagnosing themselves, and they were diagnosing themselves, and like most of them come in here and they're like, dude, I have that condition that you're describing online, and I'm like, yeah, I check them. I'm like, yeah, you have it, and they, I teach to my cash-based business mentorship, which is a clinical mentorship too. You can't have one without the other because there's no sales techniques. We just get the person out of pain. And that's the sales technique, okay? Actual clinical results, right? The way it should be. And these people are driving. I teach 2 to 3 hours away. That to open up your targeting on Facebook, Instagram to 2 to 3 hours away. I turn people into super specialists in chronic pain. And that's how I do. Like, there's a guy here in Clearwater area that has a 94% success rate with Lyme disease. Like, nobody really knows what to do about that, right? And people try, but 94%, and he has people come from all over the world, all over the world. He has a cash-based practice, and it basically costs like a new car to see him. But guy's booked, and got multiple doctors in there working for him. And it's remarkable, the results that he's getting. So that's essentially what I do is I turn you into a super specialist in chronic pain. Now, the forgotten thing in the cash-based coaching industry is the fact that everybody's telling you they're going to position you as the expert in, in injuries. Like, oh, I'll position you as an expert and, on Google or whatever. But what happens when they get there, man? Are you the expert? Can you get the person out of pain immediately? Because if you do, the patient then trusts that you know what you're doing. If you just use fancy sales techniques, which I don't use, if you use fancy sales techniques, then the person just is like, another person trying to sell me something, talk them out of their insurance, blah, blah, blah. I don't do any of that. I teach my patients, I teach my students, my cash-based hybrid cash-based clinical and business students that if the person needs to use their insurance or wants to use their insurance, then find a place to send them to, okay? And here in Tampa, I have a place down the road, and I just found out that all of my, that basically the entire staff is now using like my methods, which makes me I actually told my assistant, this is my dream. This is my dream. My dream is finally coming true. I taught one therapist in there in this insurance-based clinic where I send my patients that want to use their insurance or need to use their insurance. 2, I taught one person, and then she tells me, yeah, like all these people are getting better using your methods. And then she says that these people have like failed everything stories. All these people are getting better. And she said that like 5 therapists in here are all into your methods now. And I'm like, and they're getting patients better. I'm like, this is my dream. Like it literally like made me almost emotional. Like I'm like I try, so I scream. I've been screaming for years about, like, please implement these methods. Please implement these methods, and to help these people. And I knew it would spread like wildfire once people in the clinic would start using these methods. Just off the papers I published. If you want to go much deeper into it, and how I get exceptional results, then comment expert below, and I'll send you more information on my clinical mentorship. If you want my 7-figure 20-hour-a-week cash-based clinic, comment Harvard below. I'll send you more information on that. Other than that, peace, guys. I love you both.